What up, YouTube? This your boy Open Mind. It's been a minute. Been busy, been grinding as usual. Y'all know me, I stay on the grind all the time. Want to do a quick video on propaganda and different ways to recognize it. But first thing I want to do is jump into the definition of propaganda, because people don't read. You know, people just don't read. People watch a lot of videos and have a lot of conversations and regurgitate what they've heard somebody else say, and they take what people say at face value, people that they trust, and words and terms get mixed up. You know, definitions, meanings, context, a lot of things, a lot of information is misconstrued. In fact, propaganda in of itself can be attributed to people misinterpreting some things that they heard or some shit that they regurgitated. So I'm gonna read a couple of different definitions, and then I'll go into examples just off the dome. I'm gonna read some definitions, because it's just they're the same pretty much, but some of them have different words, and go delve in deeper. Propaganda. It's a derogatory statement, derogatory word. It's information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. That's one definition. Another definition: information that is not objective and is used primarily to influence an audience and further an agenda, often by presenting facts selectively to encourage a particular synthesis. That's one second definition. Another definition from Wikipedia: propaganda is information that is not objective and is used primarily to influence an audience or further an agenda by presenting facts selectively to encourage a particular synthesis or perception, or using loaded language to produce an emotional rather than rational response to the information that's being posed. And the last definition I'll give, which that one was kind of similar to the previous one. Definition of propaganda: ideas or statements that are often false or exaggerated, and that are spread in order to help a cause, a political leader, or government. Now, that's the definition of propaganda. And I still want to break it down a little bit. Here are examples of propaganda. The narrative that black men are violent, and they're, you know, we blame the black man for his own death as he interacts with police officers. That's propaganda. How is it propaganda? Well, the narrative that's being pushed now, and not to discredit or undermine any of the movements that want to shed light on police brutality, racial injustices, racial biases, racism, discrimination, not to discredit any of those movements. But propaganda could be attributed to the different news stations that keep pushing the negative view of black men and women as we just interact and live in society. The barbecue Becky trend that's going on now, you know, where the young lady calls police on people who are out in a public space which is free to the public. There's barbecue pits in the park, and yet she still calls police on people for barbecue. That's a propaganda in itself, because the news, that's the way they cover it. Yes, we're gonna make fun of barbecue Becky girl, which I don't think that's her name, but we're gonna make fun of her for calling the police on everything. But it was propaganda that caused her to even call the cops in the first place. The news stations continue to bombard us with stories of how a black person or black people are being mistreated by police officers, or just mistreated, period. Anybody that's not white or don't have a whole lot of money to defend themselves or go after people who defame their name, propaganda is pushing a narrative that the black person is violent, lazy, and crazy. And if we keep telling you the same thing and throwing it up in your face, you're either gonna get emotional and you're gonna react to the different things that they pluck out of different areas of the nation, put a camera on it, and make a news story about it, or you're gonna believe what you see and hear as they perpetuate these stories. Hitler, for example, got into power by way of propaganda, by doing the Jewish people the same way the black people are being done. Pushed the narrative that the Jews is whatever he said they were during his time of reign, and then he gets elected by the people. Because remember, Hitler didn't take power. Hitler was elected, just like Donald Trump was. Elected by the people of Germany at the time to rule the nation. There they had an election. Hitler won the election by way of propaganda, by pushing lies and narratives over and over and over again until they become truth. They were never the truth to begin with. But if we keep telling you the same thing over and over again, and you just keep seeing it over and over and over and over again from this news station, that newspaper, that social media site, that outlet, that blog, and then in general conversation, when people have a general conversation, you'll hear people regurgitating and repeating something they heard on somebody's news station. A story that they saw, CNN, ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, all of the news stations that push the propaganda of a narrative as if it's true. You'll be in general conversation with a person and they're gonna base their points or argumentative points and arguments off of what they saw on their favorite news station. And they take that at face value. They don't do no more research beyond watching the evening news, the morning news, afternoon news, however they get their news. They don't do no research beyond that. They just see it. This news channel or station covered it, therefore it's true. Propaganda is very dangerous and it's very real. And the reason I'm making this video is so people can understand the dynamics of propaganda, not something that should be swept under the rug. You hear the term, or it's used in a sentence, it's used in a discussion, and the discussion goes or continues outside as far away from propaganda as possible. And propaganda continues to be perpetuated throughout the society. That holds some strength. I won't say it's the only reason, but it holds some real strength as to why this nation is so divided the way it is. Why everybody hates each other based off skin, color, religion, sexual orientation, beliefs, ideology. Everybody's at each other's necks because of the propaganda. I would go so far as to say that religion is propaganda. The pushing of a lie over and over again until you believe it to be true. Even though you cannot manifest or see with proof that what you're being told or taught is in fact a fact, that you can apply what you've been taught through your religion. You can apply the words in the books of your religion, whereas you can repeat it, the words and the sayings, and manifest the spirit that's in the book that you believe in. You can't do that. You can't speak in tongues, the Christian way of worshiping. You can't speak in tongues and manifest the spirit or the God of your religion. You can't speak in whatever the Muslim language is, because Muslims speak different languages, whatever the base language is that was used to write the Quran, you can't speak that out of your mouth and manifest the God of the religion that it is. Now, believe what you want, as long as you're not out here hurting nobody, killing nobody, or disenfranchising people, getting over them. As long as you're not doing any harm to anybody, you can believe what you want. But there's a thin line between belief and fact and truth. Believe what you want, but check yourself as you try to act out that which you believe that you have not seen with evidence. You've been told through propaganda over and over and over and over and over and over again that this thing is that thing and so on and so forth, but you yourself have not actually tested that knowledge that was given to you. Not all knowledge is good for you. Not everything is knowledge. Some things are gossip and propaganda. Not all information is wisdom. There's a lot of information from a propaganda umbrella that's just gossip. It's somebody's opinion. It's somebody's personal, isolated experience with a circumstance. So therefore, their isolated experience applies to everything and everyone. Propaganda. I think we're all slightly guilty of propaganda in our own little right. Those of us who have YouTube channels, those of us who have powerful voices, who have a following, we ourselves participate in propaganda to a certain degree. But propaganda in of itself is the pushing of a narrative or over exaggerating something. Like there's some facts that you give to your viewers and your listeners, and then you add your own spin on it and your own ingredients onto the fact, the truth that is now a distorted truth. There's some truth hidden in that shit you just said, or at the beginning of it, that part was the truth, but the rest of that shit you said was propaganda, some exaggerated shit. And what happens is propaganda is attracted to your emotions. It's designed for you to get emotional, because when you are emotional, you will make decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make if you were being rational and logical. If you can look past your emotional reaction to information that comes in and actually objectify and look at what you're being given objectively and break it down piece by piece, because somebody bringing you some information, why are they giving you this information? What's their aim? What they trying to get from you? Of course, you don't have to ask that question directly. These are things you ask yourself, rhetorical questions that you ask yourself in your head. You ain't got to speak on it, to try to decipher and try to break down where this individual, group, or entity is coming from as they try to persuade you with this information that they've come across to get you to either side with them, donate to them, support them, promote them, whatever. What is the purpose of this bombardment of lies and misconception, misdirection, misinformation? Propaganda. These are the things that you do when you're faced with propaganda. You gotta first question. You're not necessarily gonna get answers to the questions that you ask. So I like to call them rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions are questions you don't have to answer or don't require an answer. They're just questions that make you think about what's been presented to you. So you don't have to verbally out loud ask the question. You can ask yourself the question and then let the person or group or entity bury themselves. Let them shoot themselves in the foot. because eventually they're going to show their hand once they get what they want. Once a group or person or group of people, politician, whether it be radio host, corporation, once they get what they want from you, they inevitably show their true colors. But it's too late, because they already have your money, they already have your support. If you've retweeted, if you've shared their merchandise, their whatever, even if you don't agree with their sinister ways, because you yourself didn't know that they were sinister, you're still responsible, and you still supported this propaganda machine that turned out to be evil, whatever company, corporation it is. So you can't really get too outraged, because here's your tweet where you supported them, here's your Facebook post, here's your Instagram meme repost. However you support the propaganda pushing group or person, once you've supported them and they've showed their hand, it's too late. It's too late to complain. It's too late to bitch. So how do we recognize propaganda? Because we know the definition, but how do we spot it? How do we decipher these images and this information that's being given to us by way of the internet, by way of TV? You know, however you get your information, wherever you get it from, wherever your source is. How do you recognize propaganda? Well, you first have to know the information that you're getting. You have to go get a second source, third source. Just like I read multiple definitions of the term propaganda, and aside from the two, there were different definitions, different wordings, different sources giving the definition for propaganda, and they all pretty much met up at the same conclusion. The words were different, the explanation was different, but they all used synonyms, which is words that kind of mean the same, different words that have the same definition. They all use synonyms to explain propaganda, and they all pretty much said the same thing. That's how you recognize and break down propaganda. You go to another source on the same topic or the same information that you're seeking. You go to another source and see if that information checks out. Now, different sources can be propaganda. So when you receive all this information, you then test it to your own common sense. The life you've lived, what you already know, what you've already seen, and then you ask yourself, is this possible? Can this really be true? This, that, or the other? And if you still can't figure out that you're being, that this is propaganda that you're getting, the best thing for you to do is to keep it to yourself. Because if you cannot factually hold true to the information that you are receiving to try to then give it out again, you don't really know if what you're saying is true or not. You then only regurgitating some other shit. And this your boy Open Mind. I just wanted to give a quick take on propaganda. Turned out to be a longer take than I really planned, but I just wanted to put it out there. Wanted to make this video because propaganda, even though it's nothing new, remember I mentioned Hitler. That was back in the mid 1900s. Propaganda is a secret force. I ain't gonna say secret. It's ignored, overlooked force that controls our minds, controls our actions and our responses. And it's that force, that idea, that action, that perpetuating of exaggerated bullshit to push a narrative to then, get the agenda done, whatever the agenda is at the time. Because propaganda doesn't necessarily have to be race. Propaganda is what is driving a lot of the divide and hate and toxicity in this nation. Not just the United States though. because Hitler was over there overseas in Germany. Propaganda is how governments come into power. Propaganda is how police officers can get away with killing people who didn't commit any crimes. They can revert to the propaganda machine or the propaganda information that's already out there and hide behind and say, hey, see, this is why we kill people, because of that. We kill black people unarmed because they're this. Got to be smarter than that, people. You got to recognize propaganda, not necessarily react to it immediately until you have cold, hard facts that cannot be refuted. And it's your boy Open Mind. Until next time, I'll holler at y'all on another day. Create a bless, get money. Deuces.